Musk has become $138 billion richer. Zuckerberg has become $49 billion richer. And Bezos has become $28 billion richer since election day.
Now, the problem is with this, he's saying it, yeah, the top sort of earners and wealthiest people have accumulated more money, which is very true. But you have to look at it from the perspective in terms of industry, which creates, loads of jobs and stuff, and general like technological advancement in terms of Elon Musk, and so there's very different ways to look at it. Like, although yes, a lot of the money generated since the election has gone to the 1%, it still boosts the overall US economy. So. And you've got to remember, this is just since the election, so this has taken place in, this Trump been in office for, 4 weeks or something, and there's already been this level of economic growth with the richest people, and it has a trickle-down factor. So I really think this point is kind of irrelevant that he makes here.
60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. Does anyone really think that the oligarchs give a damn about ordinary?
I mean, I'm just going to pause it right here again, because he talks about oligarchs and, this isn't like Russia. In America, yeah, obviously Elon Musk has, heavily, he's heavily involved in sort of direct governmental politics. He's always close beside Trump, but it's always been like that. Billionaires have always had a lot of influence in politics. It doesn't make it an oligarchy, though, because at the end of the day, there is still a legislative body, and it's very different to an oligarchy, let's say in Russia, where it is literally essentially run like an authoritarian dictatorship with just a group of rich people making every major decision. It is very different in America, so I really would not call it an oligarchy in America.
Trust me, they don't. Mr. President, we are living in a extremely dangerous time. And future generations will look back at this moment, what we do right now, and remember whether we had the courage to defend our democracy against the growing threats of oligarchy and authoritarianism.
You see, I really don't understand what he's saying when he's like, oh, there's a threat to democracy, because if anything, since the election, and since the executive orders have been signed, there's been, less sort of censorship, and there's been more freedom. Even, going back to sort of Musk buying Twitter and stuff, I mean, there's been more, freedom of speech based on social media than ever before, in its history. So I think this idea that democracy's under threat is very ironic, considering, Trump has passed multiple, executive orders advocating directly for free speech. So I really think, this is sort of him backpedaling, and he's essentially trying to demonize the Republican Party just for the sake of it, for his own political gain. I genuinely don't know why he's trying to push this narrative, because most people with more than 2 brain cells know that everything is more sort of, there's more freedom since Trump got elected in terms of freedom of speech. So
they will remember whether we stood with President Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, who in 1863, looking out over a battlefield where thousands of people had died, thousands of soldiers died in the fight against slavery. And he stated that, quote, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Do we stand with Lincoln's vision of America, or do we sit idly by and allow this country to move into a new vision? And that is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, for the billionaire class.
I mean, I'm just going to pause it again. Again, like, he's still trying to push this narrative that all the billionaires run everything, and yeah, obviously they have a tremendous amount of influence in general, but again, like I said before, it's not an oligarchy, and every functioning sort of liberal democracy in the Western world has the exact same structure where, obviously, due to the capitalistic nature of these societies, the rich top 1% have the most influence. It's always been like that throughout history, but the people still have a voice, the people still have power, and the actual parliamentary body itself is not just stacked full of the richest people. It's people still have freedom to vote and freedom to choice, and that's the difference between like an oligarchy in Russia and America, which isn't an oligarchy.
But it is not just oligarchy that we should be concerned about. Not just the reality that today 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million. 3 people, more wealth than the bottom 100.
I think he meant billion, not million.
170 million Americans.
Oh, he's on about people.
It is not just that the gap between the very, very rich and everyone else is growing wider, and it is not just that we have more income and wealth inequality today.
I mean, yeah, he's on about wealth disparity, and essentially he's referring to, the difference in wealth. And yeah, he's right, the wealth gap is growing, but at the end of the day, the overall economy is still increasing. So although the wealth gap is, wealth itself is increasing overall, if you get what I mean.
Than we have ever had. On top of all of that, the reality is that today we are moving rapidly under President Trump toward authoritarianism.
I mean, I just really feel like he's just saying this to sort of demonize and label Trump in a negative way, because he's not stupid. He knows what authoritarianism is, and if you think for a second that the American democratic system, or the American, government system they have in place is authoritarian, that's really not what authoritarianism is. You want to look at somewhere that's authoritarian, look at like Russia, for example. They have quote unquote elections that are clearly steered in one direction. And sort of general freedoms are very restrictive and very policed, whereas in the US that is simply not the case.
More and more power resting in fewer and fewer hands. Mr. President, as we speak right now, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man on the planet, is attempting to dismantle major agencies of the federal government which are designed to protect the needs of working families and the disadvantaged.
I'm just going to pause here. I think this is complete garbage what he's saying. He's referring to Doge, obviously, which is, or has been, sort of auditing various American sort of companies, you could say. And I really do think that that it's really not, a bad thing. Like, they're not removing sort of social security, social services whatsoever. All they're doing is looking at each, institution from a fiscal perspective individually and assessing where cuts can be made. They're not sort of just going around with like an axe and just chopping, all these social securities that are in place and removing them. They're not doing that whatsoever. I really think Doge is a great thing, and I'm from the United Kingdom. We need a version of it here. So I really hate this argument that he's trying to put forward.
These agencies were created by the U.S. Congress, and it is Congress's responsibility to maintain them, to reform them, or to end them. It is not Mr. Musk's responsibility. responsibility.
I mean, I'm not being funny. Yeah, the U.S. Congress they've failed at their responsibility, though. This is why people like Elon Musk have to come in, because Congress has completely failed at their responsibility. So this is why this is all happening.
What Mr. Musk is doing is patently illegal and
I mean, it's not illegal whatsoever, and he's going to say unconstitutional, and it isn't, because Donald Trump's the president. Donald Trump has allowed it, therefore making it completely legal. So
constitutional and must be ended. Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, President Trump attempted to suspend all federal grants and loans. An outrageous and clearly unconstitutional act. And as I hope...
I'm not being funny. He loves this unconstitutional word. He uses it all the time. Like, the actual meaning of it is really losing its value, because people like him and him himself just keep using it, under circumstances where it shouldn't be used.
Hope every sixth grader, every kid in the sixth grade in this country knows, under the Constitution and our form of government, the president can recommend legislation, he can support legislation, he can veto legislation, but he does not have the power to unilaterally terminate funding passed by the Congress.
I mean, this is why he has executive orders for, giving him executive powers to do, the exact things that you're saying that he can't do. This is why executive orders are in place.
It is Congress, the House and the Senate, who control the purse strings.
It's not entirely true.
In this move toward authoritarianism, it is not just the Congress that is being attacked. It is our judiciary. This weekend, the Vice President of the United States, a graduate of Yale Law School, who clerked for a Supreme Court justice, said that, and I quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power," end quote.
I mean, I don't know about that quote, but he, again, I'm not going to watch this whole video. I'm probably going to stop here because he's going to repeat himself 50 times, I can already tell. But all he's essentially trying to do is demonize and label Trump as a dictator, authoritarian leader, oligarch, which is ironic considering there's been a lot more executive orders and laws signed advocating for the freedom of speech. So, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of what Bernie Sanders says. If you want to see more videos like this, leave a like and subscribe, and goodbye.